What's up, everybody? Welcome to another powerful episode of the Surf and Sales podcast brought to you by the Surf and Sales Summit. Although this year we could change our name, Richard. We could call ourselves the Surf and Sales Euro Summit because we're going to Europe for the first
Yep.
time. We will be
Yep.
in Portugal at the Surf and Sales Summit the first week or so of October, October 5th through 9th, out in Peniche, Portugal. Pop on over to Lisbon. We'll pick you up. Quick little hour drive to the coast. We're down to 8 tickets, Richard. We're
I
two-thirds sold out.
know. I know. And you're
Not
selling them
bad.
all. So
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
much to your chagrin and mine too. Like as usual, Scott is actually tends to be a better salesman than me. I'm a better teacher maybe than I am a
Uh,
salesperson.
I
So
don't know about most of those statements, but we are where we are. I'm Scott Leese, co-founder of Surf and Sales Summit and the Surf and Sales podcast here with Richard Harris. And we are joined today by a fellow Northern California native, I think. Guy went to high school around the corner from where Richard lives. We're here with David Brock. He is the founder and CEO at Partners in Excellence. He's been doing this for 23 years, running his own business, Richard.
yeah,
23 years. He's got you beat. He's
he
got you
does.
beat. He's been doing this longer than you and me. He's been on his own longer, and he has more hair than you, despite being
Yeah.
a little more mature than you. Dave, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. It's good to be on the show. I'm looking forward to a really interesting discussion.
Well, we
Yeah.
appreciate you spending some time with a bunch of jokers like us. I know it's a little not your normal clientele. Can you tell me what made you start your sales career at IBM of all places back in the day? That
Well,
that feels like a strange place to start in today's landscape and climate, but maybe it wasn't when you got started. I'm curious
so
about it.
so it goes back. Prior to that, I was studying for my PhD in theoretical and applied physics at UC Berkeley, and I had planned to be a research scientist up on the Hill or at Lawrence Livermore or something like that, professor, and doing that all my career. And I'm a skier, and one weekend I was skiing and happened to be riding a chairlift with an inventor. And we'd ski down the slopes together, ride the chairlift, talk about his invention, and so on. And I gave him some insight and some advice. When I got back home, it was prior to the days of email, so I wrote him a letter and sent it to him saying, "Here's some things you need to do for your product." Calls me up, says, "I'd like you to be VP of product development and engineering for this startup company. It's a classic Silicon Valley story. I'm 20 years old and I'm saying, oh my God, here I am, VP of
Oh,
engineering and product development of this startup company. This is really cool. I didn't realize that on Thursdays it was my turn to clean the kitchen and empty waste paper baskets and all that kind of thing. But I did that and we failed miserably.
you did. How come?
Uh, 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 Ultimately, it was ego and not knowing the limits of our capabilities.
Hmm.
We failed miserably. And what I suddenly realized was it takes more than a hot product to be successful in the marketplace. And so I said, geez, I need to learn a little bit more about business. And also, I went and got my MBA. And lo and behold, I happened to be on the only student on the board of directors of UCLA at the time. And at the time, there was this guy who was also on the board of directors. His name was Frank Carey. He was chairman of IBM. And Frank and I kept talking. He said, Dave, your hair's a little long for me because I kept having to have bobby pins and things, the old kind of Berkeley style and all that. And I said, oh no, Frank, it's you guys, I'm a Berkeley person, UCLA person, I'm into West Coast cool
You're
stuff.
California.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He
Yeah.
says, well, Dave, it's interesting. And I started interviewing, got a lot of job offers, and he asked me to interview, and I interviewed locally, and they said, "Thank you for interviewing with us. We don't think you could ever be a salesperson." And I said,
that sounds familiar. I got that one time back in the day.
Yeah.
What did that do to you?
And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, you're very talented. You'll be very successful. You just won't be a successful salesperson.
Do you think that was code for we don't like your long hair?
It may have been. I had used bobby pins and tuck it back really nicely and had a nice little ponytail and all that. And I was wearing a suit, Pierre Cardin suit with tie and all that sort of stuff. So I did that, and my reaction was I wasn't so excited about the job with IBM, but I said, F you. You can't tell me what I can do. And so I said, I'm going to interview with every IBM office until I get a job offer. So I happened to be going to New York City. I was doing some interviews actually with some big consulting companies and about ready to accept a job. And somebody at IBM said, okay, we'll interview you. Went in and they said, okay, we think you can have a job. We'll offer it to you. And I ended up taking it. And it's been just such a fantastic ride. You learn so much about business. You learn so much about selling. You learn so much about kind of teamwork and just, aggressive competition.
Do you think that somebody like me and people, maybe it's even more common now. I think it is, but like I never worked for an IBM. I never worked for a big company in any way, shape, or form. Do you think people like me who went the early stage startup route right from the beginning missed out on a bunch of this stuff that you're talking about and are therefore worse off because of it?
The only right answer to that is it depends, and we each have kind of our own paths and how we get there, and sometimes we get stuck in certain places and we have some level of success, or we just kind of muddle through, and it can be with early stage startup companies, and we kind of muddle through going from startup to startup to startup, but we have fun or do something, or we start with very, very large companies and achieve great success there and maybe go from large company to large company or kind of navigate around. So, I think it really depends. And this is where I think we miss so much in the world of selling and business and maybe society in general is you don't get the best work out of people unless you're working in something that gives you great joy. Where you're learning, you're challenged, you're constantly developing, you're constantly pushing, and you don't get great work unless you're in that environment. So that environment is different for everybody in the world.
For everybody.
And so the challenge is, how do you find that? And I don't know how many people I see, whatever roles they're in, they're putting in the hours. And they're doing okay, not great, but they're not achieving their full potential.
They're just punching a clock.
They're punching a clock, yeah. They may be paid very nicely for punching the clock.
Right.
But they're not achieving their full potential.
So I want to go all the way back to the ski lift thing. Mm-hmm. When you were, just out of curiosity, when you're on this ski lift, is this someone you knew or was this a total random stranger?
It was, I had all my buddies, it was this one weekend, usually my buddies and I would go up and we'd ski together. For some reason they couldn't, and it was great powder skiing. So I went up by myself, standing in line, and you had to pair up with somebody. And I happened to meet this, it was a weird old guy. I mean, Jesus, he must have been somewhere in around 31, 32.
So that's great. But the reason I asked that question is that, a big piece of this story is talk to strangers, right? Get off your phone, take an earbud out, say hello to somebody, right? Like, I think that is a piece we're now missing.
It's a lost art.
It's a lost art. Like my Second and probably first real client was because I talked to a stranger on an airplane, right? From Gaines, it was Gainsight with Nick Mehta, and they were 15 people at that point. So, like, I hope people listening kind of go like, just make an effort, once a week, talk to a stranger, right? Like, just make a small effort. It pays off.
It's stunning how it pays off in terms
Yeah.
of relationships and developing
Yep.
people you meet and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm amazed. I go to restaurants and I see everybody sitting around distracted by their device, not even talking to the person they're with or their family, and ignoring everybody around them and distracted by what's on the device. And I just say, what if you got to know the person next to you at the bar? Or what if you just asked a few questions to the waiter? Or those kinds of things. It's amazing what you get out of it.
Totally. There was a guy, I think he was on Demoted's podcast with Corporate Bro and Corporate Natalie, and they had a guest, and he was saying, like, the least social thing you can do is sit down and like watch television all night with your significant other. Like, you're not engaging. Like, that's not really spending time together. And Kathy and I talked about it, and we decided, you know what, let's make a little effort. Let's put a little effort into it, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes, just sometimes. So
if you look at, I have these routines that I do every day to keep me very productive. And one thing on every day on my list is call someone. I just kind of look randomly. It may be somebody that I've met years and years ago, and I reach out and nobody uses the phone anymore, but I reach out on the phone and just have a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what happens with that. I don't have a hidden agenda, a purpose. All I want to do is connect with somebody I haven't connected with in years, or sometimes it's kind of a cold call to somebody I haven't met, but I said, I see you doing something interesting. I'd love to learn a little bit more about it.
Do you have any stories like that where some of your work in M&A, like this random chat with somebody at the bar or this random call to just say how you're doing, and all of a sudden it progressed, and now all of a sudden you've got like a M&A event happening?
Well, I don't do strictly M&A. I do a lot of things.
Yeah, I know it's a piece of what you help.
I guess a random conversation. This was about very late 90s, and we lived in Cleveland at the time. We still have.
I lived in Cleveland in 99. So, geez, we got a lot in common, Dave.
We're in Cleveland.
I lived over off of Coventry Road for a while on the east side, and then I moved into the Lofts downtown.
Oh, I lived on Coventry, just down from the church.
Mm-hmm. So I was above Grum's sub shop.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So anyway, so we had a couple of cats, and my wife would go off, and I would go off on vacations or do things. And there was this high school kid down the street that we'd hired to come in and take care of the cats and all that. And one time, we came back home and we were talking to Whitney, and Whitney said, "Hey, Dave, my buddies and I are starting, one of our teachers are starting this this business, and you're this big consultant. Do you mind if we sit and talk with you?" I said, "Fine." And we got together in my office, 3 guys and a high school teacher. We started talking about their business. And I said, here's some things. And I ended up being an advisor to them. Didn't get any cash, got some free cat sitting, and also some really interesting things. They founded a company called hiphopbattle.com. And they were in the very early days of hip hop. They sponsored all these interesting battles. And what they would do is make feature films. Well, their first feature film we took to Sundance. They won an award. I helped them get acquired by Sony. and they were doing great things. But also, I got to meet really cool people. I remember one time I was sitting in Schiphol. I was on the way to do an SKO in Prague, and it was early in the morning, and there was a group of guys kind of walking around looking confused. And you could tell they're Americans because we know we all look kind of like that. And I said, can I help you? And they said, well, is this a flight to Prague? And they start talking and all. And it turns out they're a part of Wu Tang. And these guys.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
These guys, and so we start talking. And I said, oh, well, I'm on the board of directors of hiphopbattle.com. And they said, we really have been trying to get on your agenda and do some things with you. And I said, oh, here's the CEO's number. I gave him my card. Here's the CEO's private number. Give him a call, say, Dave said you ought to talk, and so on. So we had this great conversation. We jump on the plane, we get to Prague, and baggage claim, they came and said, hey, Dave, we're doing a concert tonight. And can you come? And I said, oh, shit. You know, I'm meeting with this client. We have a fancy dinner. I'm doing the speech afterwards. And they said, well, what time will it end? And I said, well, I can't rush off right after the speech. I have to have a few drinks with them. And I said, I probably could be available at 9:30. Oh, we don't go on till 11 o'clock.
Perfect.
So they send a limo over to me. Now I'm sitting there. My travel clothes are a blue pinstripe suit, white shirt, and wingtips. You know, but I'm standing backstage trying to look cool. And, you know, had a great time at the concert. But, you know, in these kind of chance conversations, you get to meet really interesting people and learn different things. Now, you know, one of the things that I've taken from that is I have this concept called artful plagiarism. And how do we learn from people and organizations very different from us? So I get guys like Wu Tang together with some of my big corporate clients, and we talk about innovation. And so how do we talk about creating music in the business of creating music and take lessons from that into what a big semiconductor can do and vice versa? So if you make these connections and you start connecting these people, just magic things happen.
That's awesome.
What a story.
I can sit here and listen. Yeah. I'm like, okay, what's the next cool story? Like that's all, like, that's the only question I got. Give me another, you know, random kind of cool story. But I actually do want to ask you a more serious business question, right? Like, for those who don't know, Dave wrote a great book called The Sales Manager Survival Guide, which is fascinating. Because very few people talk about this kind of stuff at leadership. There's so many sales books. Scott and I've each written sales books. Scott's written a leadership book. I have not yet. I am curious, you know, it's 2025. Is everything still the same since you wrote that book? It's just got a new layer of paint on it in terms of being a sales manager and surviving, or are there new things that you're noticing?
I think the underlying principles are constant and they go back. I didn't invent anything new, but the underlying principles go back decades, even centuries, about what leadership is and things like that. I think how we demonstrate that and how we exercise and implement that changes based on the context, based on the times, based on the tools, technologies, and processes, and so on. So, but the underlying context, the underlying principles are always constant.
Yeah, I say a lot hasn't changed since Mesopotamia all the time.
Right? Yeah,
goods and services.
You know, the tools that I use to coach, or I recommend to frontline managers to coach and develop their people today are very different than when I published the book a few years ago. And so we adapt to do that, but the underlying purpose and what they're trying to achieve in this coaching and in this growth and development and so on and so forth are constant.
Do you feel like the current level of sales managers are more open to being coached on how to be a better manager than, say, the Gen Xers like me? or not really? It's all the same.
I I I don't know. I tend I don't believe they are any more open or any more closed.
Fair, fair, fair. So, all right, now that we've got all the boring stuff out of the way, Scott, what other question do you have for me? Because you're the more creative of the two of us. You're the musician of us.
Jeez.
So,
Okay. Um, what I want to know, at Partners in Excellence, which is the company that you've been running for 23 years, you've been doing this long enough to see lots of soup du jour, lots of like this trend and that trend. It's all about this, then that thing's gone. It's all about this, then that thing's gone. Now it's all about AI. It's all about automation, right? That's the soup du jour for right now. What I want to know as a business owner is, how do you best prepare and reinvent yourself multiple times over so you stay relevant, so you stay active, you stay successful? Because I've only been doing this for 5 years, and there's been a few world events, let's just say, that have thrown things for a loop. Richard's been doing this for longer than me, but you've been doing longer than both of us combined. So how do you deal with these trends, and then you got to do this one thing, and then that thing's gone, you got to make this new thing? How have you navigated that?
I think you go back to foundational kinds of things is, and as an individual, as an entrepreneur, or even as an individual contributor in a large organization, is I think, it's what's your purpose? What are you here to achieve? Why is it important to you? And then how do you find work that enables you to achieve your purpose? So, I'm at, obviously I'm at an age where people are going to say, I say all the time, Dave, when are you going to retire? You've made a lot of money. You've been very successful. You have white hair. You're an old fart. When are you going to retire? And I said, my response is always, I get up every morning and I get to do my hobby. I work with people around the world who are dealing with some of the toughest problems in the world, and I get to work with them in doing this. And they pay me exorbitant fees to do that. What could be so much fun? Why would I ever quit? And I think it took me I wandered a little bit each time I was achieving my purpose, but my purpose changes over time.
Yeah.
And I think, I see so many people that are underachieving their potential because they aren't connecting with their purpose and what drives them to what they do. And, you talk to a lot of people that say, well, I get that done outside of work. And it said, but work is such a huge part of your life. Why the hell would you be wasting time on anything that doesn't contribute to your purpose? The other thing I said, and this gets, a little bit more crass, is if you're not working on something that is focused on your purpose, you'll never achieve your full potential, and you'll never achieve the full comp or rewards that you could achieve. I mean, you're just going through the motion, so you're never going to perform at the level you could perform, and you never get the rewards, whether they're psychic, personal, or financial. You'll never get the rewards you want. And so I just see people wasting their time, and it's tragic. And it doesn't take that much to find something that, and again, your purpose evolves, it doesn't take that much time to find something where you can really contribute. And so I've always said, rather than go after the money, go after the thing that gives you great joy. And what happens 100% of the time, the money follows and at a rate that's much higher than it does the other way around.
That's awesome. I love this because, and Scott knows this about me because I'm all about sort of the mental game and mental health. And, I say you have to bring your whole self everywhere, right? There's not, and I was really bad at this in my 20s and 30s of, there was work Ricky and then there was social Ricky, and social Ricky was an idiot. Not much, I don't know them much smarter now, but I tried to keep those two things apart. Is it and I'm thinking for the people who are a little bit younger than all of us.
You failed, obviously.
Miserably.
Social Ricky leaked over, right?
Yeah. So my question, and as I'm thinking about people who are a little bit younger, because you were saying, your purpose can change over time. If you're in your early 20s and you're coming out of college, or, maybe you're coming out of the military, or you didn't go to college, you're just in that, you're trying to build that career. Is it appropriate that maybe for several years your purpose is to find your purpose? You don't know what your purpose is,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then how do you, it may be too simple of a question, but how do you know when you found your purpose?
So one is this isn't only a mistake that you make early in your career, it's mistakes you make throughout your career. I mean, I've done some things which have, in the last, 5-10 years that have diverted me from my purpose a little bit. And, and I start looking at it and I say, and I go back to, it sounds really kind of corny, is I look at, I don't have fun in what I'm doing. I don't have great joy. I'm not growing and learning from this. Why the hell do I waste my time on this? Let me stop this and get back on course. And that's constant through our lives. So it sounds hokey and crazy, but, if you aren't getting great joy in what you're doing, stop it and take the time to find something that gives you great joy in doing it. And you may be like kind of bumper cars at a carnival and all, you may go around a little bit until you find it. But God damn, I see so many people that just give up.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's tragic. It's tragic for them. It's tragic for business. It's tragic for humanity.
Yeah. I see that a lot too. And I feel like my opinion is that everybody's so busy looking at their phone, watching everybody live a life while you're sitting there watching them live that life when you're not living a life at all. You know what I mean? Like you're just, what is your life? You're just scrolling and watching somebody else do all the fun stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So
we're voyeuristic now.
Yeah.
I'm not a great spectator sport type guy.
You want to play.
Yeah.
I get out and I want to be on the field and playing. I say I'm a triathlete, but
that means you try to be an athlete. Is that what you mean?
I do that. Yeah. The good news is at the age that I'm at, I always end up in the top 5 of my age group. I don't say that there are only 5 in the age group competing, but But I want to be on the playing field doing it, and if I get my teeth kicked in, I learn from it.
Yeah,
and I go from it. And sitting on the sidelines watching it, cheering and applauding and seeing my team win is okay, but that's not.
That's how you
wired.
That's not what you're there for. Yeah.
We got to sort of start to move to wrapping stuff up, but we always sort of turn this over to you. And, if there's any questions you'd like to ask us, feel free. Although I feel like I'm patronizing you by asking you what advice you want from us.
No, because I learned. So here's something. I have a premise, and it's something I talk deeply to a lot of people about, so I'll share it with you. I believe we're living in a business world. Let's just focus on business and maybe even selling and go to market of declining expectations.
Planning expectations, like client expectations, operator
Declining
expectations,
expectations of
everybody,
ourselves, of our teams, of our
everyone.
organizations,
Okay.
everywhere.
Okay.
We have the saying that, in a rising tide, all boats float. In a declining tide, all boats come down. And I see that we're living in a world of declining expectations. And I think that's a huge loss individually, organizationally, performance-wise, and again, societally. Do you see this similar things, or am I just misreading the signs?
I have an answer to that. And part of my answer is jaded by the fact that most of the companies I work with are SaaS, startup, Silicon Valley, right, where there is some level of aggressive growth. But the fact that you're asking that and you work with massively huge companies also tells me, wow, it might be happening over there. I agree. I think it's because we're chasing the dollar. We're not, and there are, I think, there are some companies out there that are doing really well, and a lot of startups are trying to do good and stuff like that. But the expectation of hitting the target, hitting the revenue number, getting to profitability, particularly in the startup world, right? It is what you sign up for. I think it drives to that level of mediocrity because the goals are too high. They're unrealistic, right? And Scott and I for years have been having these conversations of, we'd much rather have teams hitting goals where 80% of the team is hitting 90 to 100% versus 20% of the team is hitting 80 to 90 to 100%. Because it's about culture, it's about self-worth, it's about developing your people, it's about, to your point, getting them to achieve things they never thought they could achieve. It doesn't mean goals should be easy, but they shouldn't be that astronomical. And I also think, and then I'll shut up and let Scott answer, I think we're in such a follow the leader mode of this, right? And that doesn't even mean, and which is interesting because why are they the leaders if we're all following them and we don't like it? I think that, you've seen it in sports, right? Everybody went to the metrics baseball method, once they saw the Oakland A's do it. Then you see it now, like everybody's been, not everybody, a lot of companies have been wanting the, return to office thing. And they were all waiting for a couple of the big companies to do it, for Amazon and Salesforce or whoever else is doing it. And that gave them the okay that, okay, as a small company, I can start to do that. So I think that's a challenge. I also think it ebbs and flows based on the economic condition of the workforce, meaning right now, it's a little bit of a buyer's market if I'm trying to hire salespeople to a certain degree. The best players still might have jobs, but I might find players I can develop if I'm a good leader. When it's the other economy, then you're forced to hire mediocrity, and sometimes the managers don't even know how to do that. So anyway, that's my long answer. So
Scott.
That's interesting. I think that we have somehow gotten rid of the middle when it comes to expectations. And you can do the bare minimum now and look like a freaking superhero. Things that used to be the bare minimum when I was growing up, whatever, like show up on time / early.
You get a participation trophy for that one.
Well, now everybody would get oranges and an award, right? But this was
at Ohio State, you get a Buckeye.
This was just like what you had to do, or you wouldn't be able to keep a job at all, right? I see it in terms of homework. I got 2 teenage boys who are in high school right now, public school in Austin, Texas. These guys have no homework. And I'm like, what the heck is happening?
Yeah.
I had so much homework when I was in high school. I didn't go to some fancy high school. It's no different. You try to hold your team accountable for certain expectations of activity or productivity results and whatnot. Shit, the people who show up and just like, do the bare minimum kind of activity levels sometimes nowadays are looking like top performers, right? So in some of these arenas, I feel like I've had to lower my expectation. But then if I go all the way to the other end, our expectations are outrageous. Like I talk to people all the time who think that, because they graduated yesterday, they should be making $250,000 a year already.
Yeah.
Right? Or I talk to founders who think selling their business for 30 million is a failure and just don't have the perspective of like, okay, that should be generational life-changing wealth for you, even with inflation and everything else kind of going on. And now our expectation is you're not a successful company or business person if you didn't sell for $1 billion or something like that. So it's like on one end, the expectations are so outrageously high, yet on the other end, so outrageously low that we've lost the plot, I think, of the sweet spot, which is got to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, see, it's really an interesting, there are no simple answers to this. It's an interesting dynamic that I would tend to rephrase what you say is our aspirations are exceptionally high. What we accept falls far short of our aspirations. And then we get into this cycle of well, this is the way people work, so we accept lower things.
Yeah.
And so we get this death spiral that goes on that says, somehow you got to stop this. I look at it and I get real crass here. In what world is and I spend a huge amount of time in SaaS or technology organizations and in SaaS organizations and some early stage organizations, and this is not for them. It's kind of pervasive. In what world is a 15 to 20% win rate acceptable? In what world is it acceptable that fewer than 40% of your people are making goal, and you have the right, sometimes our goals are overly inflated and so on, but where are we figuring this out? In what world is it acceptable that fewer than 40% of our people are making goal? In what world is it acceptable that we have average tenures of 11 to 18 months when you look at the huge opportunity cost to organizations from that talent loss? In what world is well, I'll go on, but you kind of get the point. We've grown to accept these things, and they keep eroding, and they keep eroding. I look at it too, and again, I must have learned too much from Michael Douglas and Wall Street, because I kind of am driven by greed is good. In what world is allowing 60% of our customers in committed buying decisions, funded buying decisions, make no decision? We are accepting these things that we have the ability to change. It doesn't take a huge amount of work to go from a 15, 20% win rate to a 30 to 40% win rate. I can get it done in 3 to 6 months in an organization. It doesn't take much to have more and more of your people achieve goal. It takes a little bit longer to get up to maybe 75% of people achieving goal. But, I look at all the opportunity cost, financial opportunity cost. I look at all the kind of social and developmental and all the other kinds of opportunity costs. And it just pisses the shit out of me to see this loss and that we accept this. And it's, I believe it's, each one of us can make a difference by not accepting this, by finding how can we have a small point of influence where we start saying, even asking the question, why do we accept 15 to 20% win rates? What does it take to get to 30 to 40%?
Yeah. I mean, you could even zoom out from win rates, because right now everybody accepts a 1% response rate on email.
Yeah. So what's it take to get, I have clients that are getting 60, 70% response rates on email.
Meanwhile,
so we don't ask our questions, but we ask the question of, we answer our questions by doing more, not what do we change to do better. And, and I'm famous for, saying, we're on a path right now where we're creating crap at the speed of light.
There's the title. We may have to change the title. Creating crap at the speed of light.
We don't need more crap in this world.
That's how I feel about so many AI tools right now.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to get on this subject. I mean, it's interesting. I co-founded 2 AI companies. And one I'm still involved in, one I sold, was a really nice exit, and so on. And there's a huge amount of AI, but most of the discussions I see in the selling world are dull discussions.
That's because they're scrolling on their phone.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get deep and heavy on this.
No. You did. You did it perfectly, because now we do have to wrap up. And I think everybody's like, well, I need to hire Dave to come fix my win rate. So
they're all like 70% reply rates. I'm calling this guy quick.
Yeah.
So how going to be able to retire now, Dave? There's no retirement in your future.
Look, it's not that difficult. In 3 years, we've taken a customer, they had 57% win rate, average deal size of $10,000. In 3 years, we took them to average deal size of $1.5 million, win rates of 82%. And the profound change and impact that they have in their customers and in the organization is, they just outperform everybody. So these things, it's not magic, it's just doing the hard work.
Yeah. Totally agree. So Dave, how can people get a hold of you?
I always put snotty stuff on LinkedIn, so get me on LinkedIn. You can, Partners in Excellence blog gives you a lot of my thought, my thinking and my frustrations.
Yeah.
Email me at, hopefully you can post it, daebrock@excellenc.com. I've been trying to purchase the URL Excellence for 30 years. It's never been below $10 million, and it has never come public yet. So
yeah, I've got that problem.
Listen, if you can afford $10 million URLs,
right,
you have made it. Let's just say.
I've decided I won't be quite so excellent, so it's excellenc.com.
Well, we appreciate you spending your morning with us here, Dave. We wish you all the best. Stay in touch. Thanks everybody for listening to another episode of the Surf and Sales podcast, and check out surfandsales.com. We have a few tickets left for this year's European Summit. We hope to see you there. See you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for the invitation.